Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy So What Day. Happy New Year. It is our first So What of 2026. That's my party noise. So I hope you're having a great start to this new year. And for those of you who joined us on our New Year's Eve sew-along, I hope that your Lamont bags are coming together if they're not finished already. And you know what? If they're not, don't worry about it. The entire recording is available for you on the event page where you watch the event if you did join us live. And let me know in the comments, what were your thoughts of this year and how do you like your bag? How far have you come? All the things. I want to hear about it. Okay, so today I have a fun little project. It's really more of a technique that I'm going to teach you that you can use for a variety of projects, themes, holidays, all those things. So, yeah, it's a little nod to Valentine's Day, but again, I'm going to show you how to kind of take this technique and apply it to a number of different holidays. So if you're not ready to think about Valentine's Day yet, which, you know, all of those products are hitting the shelves, it's like they take the trees down and replace them with candy hearts. It's just crazy, isn't it? But it will be here before we know it. So I'm here to prepare you with some fun projects that you can create with a little nod to Valentine's Day. Okay, so before we get started, I have to make sure that everyone is registered for our event happening next Tuesday, January 13th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be going live on sewingonline.sulky.com with our LUXE Loungewear webcast. This is a free event. All you have to do is register for the event, and that just means go to sewingonline.sulky.com and add this to your library. Then next Tuesday when we go live at 2 p.m., you'll log in and you can watch the event in its entirety. This is about an hour-long event, so about the time that we spend together here on So What. But our webcasts are a little bit more involved than a very casual So What episode that we have every week. So during our webcasts, you will get, or during this webcast, I should say, you will learn how to create this great, comfortable, luxe feeling top that has tons of customization options. So if you choose to purchase a kit for this event, you will get the stabilizer that you need for embroidering this very luxe feeling peached performance fabric by Amanda's Bundles. You will also get the pattern for the Del Mar Dolman, which comes in sizes from extra small all the way up to 10X. Okay, I'm going to give you some tips for working through the pattern, which also includes how to print out your pattern so that you're not printing excess pages that you don't need based on the size and the options that you're printing out. Let's see, I'm also going to go through, of course, how to embroider the fabric, how to work through the pattern, and tips for using either a serger or a sewing machine for constructing your top. Now, this top really doesn't have very many seams and it comes together really, really nicely. You don't have to deal with setting in a sleeve because it's a dolman sleeve, right? So it's a little bit of a drop sleeve, which has such an easier construction method than most tops. You can choose to add cuffs, you can choose to add a hood, you could do a crew neck, a V-neck, a cowl neck, and then of course you can also change the length of your top based on where you like to wear your tops. Do you want a tunic length? Do you want it to hit at your hips? That type of thing. And then there's also a couple of different hemming options too. You can add a cuff, you can just simply hem it. You can even go raw edge because this fabric is a knit that isn't going to fray. It's a very, very luxurious feeling knit. You know, those fabrics that just feel so buttery soft next to your skin. That's why we're calling it LUXE Loungewear. Okay, but really it's going to be like an everyday wear type of top. And then I'm going to show you some different embroidery placements as well. So you could see on this image, the embroidery is down the sleeve, but you could also choose to maybe have your embroidery cascading along the shoulder or along the center back, or even on the front optional pocket. So we're going to go through a lot of stuff next Tuesday. I hope you will join us. All you have to do is register. Once you register, you'll get a confirmation email saying that you've registered for the event. And I did see in the chat, someone said they didn't receive a confirmation email. I do want to say that if you've joined us in the past for one of our events and maybe you unsubscribed from those emails, because we do send out a lot of reminder emails leading up to the event. So maybe you've hit unsubscribe or something like this in the past. If you've done that, you won't get any future emails from our education platform either. So I suggest if you didn't get a confirmation email when you registered, go to your account at sewingonline.sulky.com. Make sure this event is in your library. So you'll just click on My Library at the top of your screen, and then you'll see all of the things you've registered for in the past. If you don't see LUXE Loungewear in your library, go ahead and try and register for it again, and then make sure that it pops up in your library. And if you're having any other troubles other than that, feel free to email us at customercare.sulky.com and we will troubleshoot this for you. All right, so LUXE Loungewear. I was just going to show off our kits for the event because I have gotten a few questions about the kit. So first off, the main kit for the event gives you all of these Sulky threads. There are 9 Polydeco Sulky threads. This is our polyester thread that we really love using for stretch fabrics like this Peached Performance fabric. These are the threads that are in the embroidery designs that you get for free just by signing up for the event. The embroidery designs are coming from embroiderydesigns.com, and I've redigitized them so that they will work with this fabric. And that's another thing that we're going to go over next Tuesday is what types of designs are going to work with these types of fabrics. Because when you're working with a stretch fabric, you want the fabric to move with your body. You don't want your embroidery to be sort of bulletproof and to not kind of move with, with your body movements. So that's a really important thing we're going to discuss on Tuesday as well. At any rate, these are the 9 threads that coordinate with those designs. As you can see, you can also choose the spool of thread that coordinates with the fabric colorway that you're working with for the construction of your garment. So not only can you use these for embroidery, but we're also going to use this thread for construction. If you choose to use a serger for your Delmar dolman, you will pick 4 threads from this palette for your serger construction because we're going to be using a 4-thread overlock stitch. And your threads do not need to match. They're going to be on the inside of the garment. What I like to do is use 2 threads that sort of match as closely as possible to my fabric colorway. Those are the threads I'm going to put in the needle. Then I can use 2 other threads in the looper and have kind of a decorative stitch on the inside of my garment. All right. Along with those 9 spools of thread, you also get a pack of Action Back Stabilizer. If you're not familiar with this stabilizer, definitely join us on Tuesday for this event because I'm going to tell you all about it. We really launched this stabilizer when we did our walking pants embroidery session, also at sewingonline.sulky.com. And it was really the first time that anybody used this stabilizer, meaning any of you got to use this stabilizer. It's really, really a dream for working with this type of fabric. So I'm really going to go into that in detail next Tuesday. And then also in the kit, you will get the PDF pattern from Amanda's Bundles, the Delmar dolman. And as I mentioned, it is suitable for sizes extra small all the way up to 10X. Okay, so once you grab up your base kit, which includes all those things, then you will add on your fabric of choice. Each of our fabric bundles are in 3¼ yard increments, okay? So that is enough to create up to the 10x size in any configuration. So if you want to make, let's say, a size extra large in the tunic length with the hood and the front pocket and long sleeves, all the things that require extra fabric, you will have enough for your garment. If you want to make a coordinating pair of pants, I suggest grab up a second fabric bundle. And I will say, if you are making the extra small size, you may be able to get away with, making a pair of shorts or a pair of, let's say, capri pants with the excess fabric. But it really is going to depend on whatever pattern you're choosing to use to make your coordinating set. So I would err on the side of caution and grab up a second fabric bundle to make sure you have enough if you do want to make a second top, or if you want to make a coordinating, pair of pants or something like that. You can add as many colorways and bundles as you want to your base kit. So if you do want to make, let's say, the mint and the lilac, grab both fabric bundles with your base kit. All right, and all of the links to our kit, as well as registering for this event, are in the description of today's post. You won't see all of it. You'll only see a snippet of the description. So you will need to click on that See More button, or it will just say More if you're watching on YouTube. And then the entire description will pop out for you, and you can click around either while we're discussing here or after our live stream today. These are what the designs look like that you will get for free just by registering for the event. So you can use these designs for a number of different projects. It obviously looks really great on the Del Mar dolman top. I love these large scale designs, and florals really look good any time of year. These are colorized to work with the threads in the kit. But they also, of course, come with color charts, so you can kind of play around if you want to create another colorway, or if you want to put these on something else, a pillow, a wall hanging, a quilt. You get the idea. So here are all the colorways that you can choose from for the kit. And here's what they look like in different variations of the Del Mar dolman. So in the lilac, we have the crew neck. This is really more of like a traditional crew neck sweatshirt fit. And then we have the minty slate with the hood in the tunic length. The sea foam is like a hoodie sweatshirt with that front pocket. And then we have the lavender, which looks kind of more like an upscale t-shirt with that cowl neck. So you could see all the different options in a number of different fits. It really is a garment that works for any body type. Oh, goodness. Almost gave that away real fast. Okay, so also on today's show, we are going to announce the winners of our Mystery Box Raffle. That's right. So our winter mystery box in 2025, I was going to say last year, it was only a few weeks ago, but it was still last year. Our mystery box theme was hot cocoa, and I hope that you all enjoyed what was inside. We do have a very, very limited number of mystery boxes left, so you can still get one. However, we are announcing the winners of the raffle tickets that were inside each mystery box this winter. So I hope you have your little ticket in hand so that I can announce the winners right now. You did see a little sneak peek there. So what we did was we took every single mystery box and assigned it a random number. Then we used a random number generator app to pick all of the winners of the raffle. Then we had to go and associate those winners with the boxes. It's quite a production over here at Sulky, I just tell you what. And I thank you to everyone behind the scenes who made this all possible, because it was, you know, it's never as easy as you think it's going to be, right? All right, so our first winners, we have 4 winning tickets that these people will win a $25 shopping spree at Sulky.com. So our first winner is ticket number 230. That's right, 230. All right, so you have won a $25 shopping spree at Sulky.com. And I do want to mention, no need to do anything if you hear your number. We're going to reach out to everyone after So What today, all of the winners, and let you know what you've won and how to redeem your shopping spree. Okay, so don't worry, sit back, relax, hold on to your ticket, and we will be in touch with you. All right, are we ready for winner number 2? This is also for a $25 shopping spree at Sulky.com. And that winner is ticket 195. All right, that's right. Tina says, I hope the winners are watching. I hope so too. But again, if someone has won and they're not watching live right now, or the replay later today, don't worry, we will contact you to let you know if you have won. All right, so that's number 2. And then our third winner from our Hot Cocoa Mystery Box, which is another $25 gift or shopping spree, I should say, to Sulky.com. And that is ticket number 5. I love my applause sound effect. It's my favorite. All right, congratulations. Ticket number 5. We will be in touch with you for how to redeem your $25 shopping spree at Sulky.com. All right, our last $25 winner is ticket number 232. All right. If you've heard your number so far, let me know in the chat or in the comments here. I would love it if you were watching live. All right. Ooh, Leslie says 195, first time winning something. Love that. Congratulations, Leslie. Okay, let's see. Now, our last winner from our Mystery Box Raffle is winning a $150 shopping spree at Sulky.com. So this is our grand prize winner of our mystery box, and that is ticket number 106. 106. Let me know if you are 106 in the comment or the live chat, because you just won $100 or $150 shopping spree at Sulky.com. All right, such fun. So also let me know, for those of you who have purchased our mystery boxes in the past, do we prefer the raffle? So fun. Or do we prefer the golden tickets? I really loved the golden ticket that we've done for so long, but we just wanted to change it up a little bit and do a fun little raffle here on So What? Because first off, I love letting people know that they've won something. It's really, really fun. It might be more fun than actually being the winner, is telling someone that they've won something. Because then you both get to enjoy, the excitement of winning. But at any rate, let me know how you enjoyed the raffle. Did you hold on to your ticket after you bought your box? Did you lose it? It's been a while for some of you, holding on to that ticket. So if, of course, Leslie prefers the raffle, because guess what? She was a winner this afternoon, so I get it. All right. I like the raffle. It was fun to look forward to. Okay. Love that feedback. Thanks for letting me know. Okay. Oh, so many things to discuss today, but you know what? Let's get to our project of the day, which is our reversible applique patchwork heart. So many techniques in one project. For today's project, and you may recognize the technique because we really sort of unveiled this technique back when we did our patriotic patchwork webcast. Was that last year? You know, it all starts to run together sometimes. But you'll recognize this technique, and I'm just kind of using it in a different way. I love sort of repurposing things like that, or turning, twisting a technique into something else that is useful, right? So then we can kind of learn it one time and adapt it for so many different things. One of the reasons I love to sew. All right. So first off, for our patriotic, no, it's not patriotic. I told you it all starts to run together. Let me put up a photo of what we're actually doing, and maybe then I can focus a little bit. The raffle was just a little bit too exciting for me, I guess. All right. So this is our patchwork heart, and we are adding it to another fabric, reverse applique style. So I love this little peekaboo effect that you can get using scraps, really. You can use scraps, you can use a mini charm pack. Basically, you want 2.5-inch fabric squares. You can even go smaller than that if you want, because what we're going to do is we're going to create our own gridded stabilizer, add our fabrics to it, fuse them to the stabilizer, and then we're going to sew all the rows and columns together so that we have perfect rows, perfect columns, perfect matched up points every single time with our patchwork. So this is a really great technique to use. And yes, you know, there are pre-printed stabilizers, or sometimes they're called pre-printed gridded interfacings. Sure, you can purchase those and you can use those for projects like this. However, I find them to be much more expensive because you're paying to have them, you know, print off these sheets or this yardage of gridded interfacing or gridded stabilizer. So you're really paying a premium for these products. Do they save you time? Absolutely. But then you're also sort of pigeonholed into the sizes of fabrics that you can use for your stabilizer grid. So what I like to do is create my own grid, and that way I can use whatever size fabrics I want. If I have a bunch of leftover binding strips, let's say they're all cut to 2 inches wide, I can open up those binding strips, press them flat, and create 2-inch fabric squares and use them for this gridded stabilizer technique. So depending on the fabrics that you have at hand, or just the look you're trying to create, you can create your own stabilizer grid using whatever sizes of fabric squares you want. Okay, so first off, we need to gather our supplies. And as I mentioned, we're going to be using Soft and Sheer Extra for our stabilizer grid to create this patchwork heart. You don't need a huge piece of it, but it is, I think, more helpful to get a roll of this Soft and Sheer Extra. It also comes in 1-yard packs though. So if you are creating something like just this heart, for example, you can get away with a 1-yard pack of Soft and Sheer Extra. If you want to create something more like the entire front of a tote bag, which I'll show you an example of that, or a pillow top, let's say, something a little bit more large in scale, or even, let's say, a mini quilt using all patchwork fabric squares. You could do an Irish chain quilt similarly. Then grab up one of the larger rolls. It's just easier to work with, I find, to have these sections of rolls. So this is going to be the giveaway today for one lucky viewer who is watching and commenting and giving me those emojis and somehow engaging with the post today. That's really all you have to do to be automatically eligible to win this roll of Sulky Soft and Sheer Extra Stabilizer. The extra means it's fusible. So not to be confused with Soft and Sheer, which is not fusible. We need our stabilizer today to be fusible so we can fuse our fabric scraps to it or our fabric squares and then do our piecing. All right, so this giveaway is valued at more than $20 and one lucky viewer will win that today or tonight from Sulky.com. So you need to grab up some Soft and Sheer Extra, and then we need some needles and thread. So for the piecing, I like to use a lightweight 50 weight cotton thread. Sulky cotton thread is a long staple thread, which means it has fewer breaking points. It has virtually no lint when you're working with it, whether you're piecing or quilting with it. And it's as close, I would say, to an all-purpose thread as you can get at Sulky.com. Now, I happen to absolutely detest the term all-purpose. Similarly, I really detest the word universal when we're talking about needles. Those things really are not true. I think it's false advertising to say that a thread is all-purpose. That's why we don't use that term at Sulky.com. We give you the type of thread and the weight of the thread. And that way you can understand what's going to work with which fabric you're working with and for what kind of technique, okay? So the 50 weight cotton thread is a really lightweight, high quality, 100% Egyptian cotton thread. And you can grab it up in these smaller snap spools so that you can get different colors for lots of different projects and not have to sort of invest in this huge, spool of thread or cone of thread, unless, of course, you're using it all the time. These basic colors like an off-white, a light gray, a white, and a black. These neutrals are really what I like to stock up on for piecing projects, for quilting when I want it to blend in. Larger scale projects, of course, we want to grab up those larger spools, but you can also get it in these smaller snap spools, which are really convenient when you want to switch out your threads quite frequently. All right, so 50 weight cotton thread, that's what we're going to use for piecing our little patchwork squares. And we want to pair that with a size 70-10 needle. And yes, this needle says universal. Cringe. But that's the needle that we're going to use for piecing. Honestly, you could also use a quilting needle when piecing. It has a little bit more of a sharper point. A universal actually has a slightly rounded point. It's not as round as, let's say, a ballpoint needle or a jersey needle, but it's a little bit more rounded than, let's say, a quilting needle would be. All right, for the quilting of our heart, I like to go with a little bit thicker thread. So I go with a 30 weight cotton thread, but you could also use that same 50 weight cotton for your quilting. If you want your quilting to blend in, to almost disappear into the fabric, then use that 50 weight cotton for the quilting. If you want your quilting to stand out, not only should you go with a thicker thread for that, but might I suggest using a 30 weight blendables thread. I love using blendables thread for quilting because you can get lots of different color changes across your quilt or quilty project without having to swap out your thread all of the time. Sometimes I do like to completely match my quilting to the fabric, and then I will get those snap spools of 50 weight cotton so that I can swap out the thread color based on the fabric color that I am stitching over. But for something like this, a patchwork project where we're using tons of different scraps, tons of different colors, I suggest going with a blendables thread that has a bunch of those colors in it. So it kind of makes everything go together nice, and it gives it a cohesive look, right? So even if we're choosing fabric scraps that you might not pair together ever, something like this, like our heart patchwork reverse applique, we can really have fun with it and then bring all of those random colors together with a thread that kind of coordinates with all of them. So with the 30 weight cotton, we need to go up in needle size. So we're going to use a 90-14 needle. That way the needle eye is bigger to accommodate the thickness of that thicker thread. And I suggest using a quilting needle when you are doing quilting. Fancy that. Okay, so to get started with our patchwork heart, we are going to go ahead and gather up our 2-inch fabric squares. Excuse me, 2.5 inch. So again, you can use fabric squares in any size. You're just going to create a grid on your stabilizer that's the same size as your fabric squares. So if you go all the way down to 1-inch fabric squares, your grid is going to be comprised of 1-inch squares. Get the idea? Now I'm using a mini charm pack of really cute coordinating prints from Cotton and Steel Fabrics. Since I had this mini charm square, these are 2.5-inch fabric squares, so I'm going to create a 2.5-inch grid on the bumpy side or fusible side of my Soft and Sheer Extra. And all the dimensions for what to cut your stabilizer to size, all of those things are in the blog post that coordinates with this project at blog.sulky.com. I also link directly to it in the description of today's post, so you can click on over and get all of the details for sizes and things like that that I used. Of course, you can create any size grid for your heart that you're creating, or for whatever shape it is that you're going to cut out of your gridded stabilizer. Okay, so 2.5-inch fabric squares. This makes it really easy also if you have a charm pack, which is 5 inches of fabric squares. If you have a charm pack, then you can just cut it in 4s and you'll have your 2.5-inch fabric squares, or mini charms. Okay, lots of numbers I'm throwing out today, so I know it can get a little bit confusing. All right, so gather up a bunch of your fabric squares, and now it's time to make our grid. So you will make as many squares as needed to create the size of applique you want to create. Again, all of my dimensions and all of that are in that blog post that I mentioned. So I have, let's see, what do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I have 9 squares going vertically and 4 squares going horizontally. And I'm going to use this whole rectangle for my heart. After I fuse everything, I will take a section of this, trim it off, and move it over so that I can get that heart shape cut out of my stabilizer. But to make things a little bit simpler, I'm going to have my grid be one long sheet and then trim it later. Okay, so I have my gridded stabilizer that I've created. Again, draw your grid on the fusible side of the Soft and Sheer Extra. Now we're going to position all our little 2.5-inch fabric squares over the top of the grid. You can play around with whatever prints you want to showcase. Just know that you are going to trim off a portion of this and move it over to create that heart shape. But if you're working with a ton of different fabrics, I don't think you'll run into any problems of, fabrics sort of colliding, right? Like the same fabric being next to another one. So really have fun with this. Use your scraps. Another fun thing about this technique is let's say you have a bunch of leftover holiday prints, something like this. Well, once you cut these little squares out of it, the fabric all of a sudden becomes non-holiday specific, right? I mean, unless you're fussy cutting like a Santa face, you probably won't recognize that it's even a holiday print. So you can get away with using a lot of different fabric scraps, and they don't have to go together whatsoever, meaning they don't have to be of a similar color family. They don't even have to be a similar holiday theme, unless, of course, you want them to. And then you can fussy cut your little squares, and that would also be really, really cute. All right, so let's see. How many fabric squares do we need to make this project? So I've got 4 by, oh, I guess it's 4 by 8. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 by 8. Okay. All right. Yeah, so you don't need very many if you're using 2.5-inch squares. Now, if you're going down to 1-inch squares, I will let you do the math on that based on the size of stabilizer rectangle that is listed in that blog post. And I apologize, I didn't make that note to share that with you today, but you can head on over to the Sulky blog and, grab up that information. All right. You can also make a tiny little heart too. It doesn't have to be the size that I created. All right. Once we have all of our fabric squares in place, it's time to fuse them. So I will say a great tip is to build this sort of grid, fabric grid, right on the top of your pressing surface so that you don't have to pick the whole thing up, move it over to your ironing board, and then you'll have to, kind of fiddle with things, making sure that everything is straight again, because things are going to shift when you move that over to your pressing surface. So if you just set your gridded stabilizer over your pressing surface and then place all of your fabrics there, you will have, an easier time fusing it and not having to do things over. But before you go fusing it, I really, really suggest using a non-stick pressing sheet over the top of your fabric, because you can see that I don't have my fabrics totally abutted next to each other. I'm using a pre-cut 2.5-inch mini charm pack for this. So my edges are cut with pinking shears. They're not going to nest exactly perfectly over my stabilizer sheet. So if you use a non-stick pressing sheet over the top of your fabric, that reduces the likelihood that you will gum up your iron and have a mess on your hands. You don't want the fusible to fuse to the iron sole plate, and then you go to move it to the next section of your stabilizer, and now you've transferred that goo to your fabric, and you'll have to kind of start over again. All right. So, and you can find those nonstick pressing sheets at a number of places. I think I got mine from June Taylor, but you can find them. Also, just don't use a fabric like a muslin or something like this that you might use as a press cloth. You really need it to be non-stick so that you can peel it away in case any of that fusible does, melt and come to the surface or get exposed. Those non-stick pressing sheets, you can just peel it off and then you're good to go and you can start sewing. All right, so speaking of sewing, we're going to put that 50 weight cotton thread in our size 70-10 needle, and you can use the same exact thread in the bobbin for this. We are going to start folding our rows right sides together. So just flip your rightmost row, let's say, over to the wrong side along our first gridded line. And you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along that stabilizer line, or, along that first row, we'll say. And if your fabric square is not entirely straight, let's say you fused it and it's a little bit askew, this project is perfect for that. No one's going to see that at all. Yes, it might be slightly off grain, but for a patchwork project like this, you're going to get away with it. Okay, so we're going to start sewing our rows. And then when all of the rows are sewn together, we're going to go in and very, very carefully clip into the seam allowance at every one of those columns. At every one of those square intersections, we're going to clip into the seam allowance up to, but obviously not through, the stitching line. Now, if you do happen to accidentally cut into the stitching line, it's okay, because our next seam is going to cover that up, basically. All right. But why we're doing this is to reduce the bulk at our seam joins. As you can imagine, we've got 2 layers of fabric and we've got 2 layers of stabilizer that we're going through. And then when we go to fold this in the opposite direction to sew our columns, we're going to have a pretty bulky seam joint. So we want to clip into the seam allowance so that we can make our seams go in opposite directions. Okay, so I have a photo of that so you can see. Once you clip in to the seam allowance, when you fold it to sew the columns, you will make those seams go in opposite directions. Okay, this is really, really important and a step that you do not want to skip. It's going to seem tedious, especially if you're working on a larger quilt project. But for something like this, we're just sewing 4 rows by 8. So you can very easily clip into those seam allowances without it taking you all day. And it will definitely save you time and frustration later, especially when you're quilting it. When you are quilting over this, you don't want this huge bump of, along every single one of those corners. So this is really going to help with that. So now we're going to sew all of those columns, making sure that our seams are in opposite directions as we sew them. All right, because some of them are going to want to flip-flop. And also you can definitely press those down before sewing. So press your seams in those opposite directions, and that'll make it easier when you're sewing the columns as well. Okay, so you want to sew every single column except the row that is between the second and third column. Does that make sense? Rows and columns are all getting confusing with me. Look at the photo, and you do not want to sew that section, because this is what we're going to trim off to create the top of our heart on the opposite side of our rectangle. So I definitely got into the groove of things and I sewed every single row, every single column. And then I thought to myself, oh no, I was supposed to not sew from the second to last column. So I had to rip out that entire seam. So definitely refer to the blog post so that you can remind yourself to not sew along that line. You can also do something like a visual clue. You could actually highlight down that line. After you fuse this, just take a highlighter and your clear ruler and draw a line down that in between those rows of fabric squares. And that's your visual clue to not sew that when you're getting in the groove of things and sewing them all together. Because now what we're going to do is we're going to trim that section right off of our rectangle. All right, after you trim that off, oh, this is in the wrong place. This was this was fusing our seams in opposite directions. Sorry about that confusion. Okay, so after we trim that section off, we're going to move it along one of the long edges of our rectangle, and we're going to line up those corners and squares. Now notice that on the left side of the portion that I trimmed off, it's a little bit longer because of the fact that it doesn't have the seam allowance, right? It still has a seam allowance, unsewn. So what you can do here is fold that little edge under a 1/4 inch to the wrong side, and then it's going to match up perfectly with the other squares on your fabric rectangle. Everybody with me? All right, once you have that, you're going to place that right sides facing and sew that in place. Okay, now we have to create our little heart shape. So I just went ahead and created my own little template. So what you can do is take a piece of paper that is the same width and similar length to your heart edges, which are going to be the 2 little pieces that jet out from your rectangle. Fold that in half and then take a circular object, a plate, a bowl, something like this, and kind of trace that, heart shape or 1/4 of a heart shape onto your template. Then you can unfold that and use that as your curve for your heart. All right. So I've unfolded my little template that I created, and that's just a pattern weight that I'm using to make sure that it's not going to shift. And now I can cut along that curved shape to form my heart. All right. Now we're going to repeat and trim that off of the other side of our heart. So as you can see, it's not super important to fold that little area under. It's really just more so that you can visualize how your squares are matching up. Okay. So now that we've trimmed that off, we have our cute little heart shape. And we can proceed with our reverse applique technique. So obviously, once you have that heart cut, you can use it for so many things. You can add some Sulky Perfect Applique Fusible Web to it, and you can do traditional applique and just place that on a tote bag blank. Maybe you have a fabric tote bag that you got that's like a promotional tote bag that has like logos or something on it. You can take this cute little patchwork heart, put it right over the top of the ugly stuff on that tote bag, and just top stitch it on there or satin stitch it to that tote bag, and you've totally made it your own. You could take this patchwork heart and put it on a sweatshirt, a jacket, so many different things, right? I'm going to do a reverse applique technique. I like how it sort of finishes the edges of the patchwork heart, but then it's going to give us raw edges on the fabric that we're adding it to. So I took a piece of canvas fabric because I turned this into a tote bag that I made myself. So 2 canvas rectangles are all you really need for a tote bag. You can use webbing straps. You can use self-made straps out of the leftover fabrics. Very, very easy. I'm sure you can find your favorite tote bag pattern or instructions out there. We have several at blog.sulky.com as well if you're in the market for a tote bag. Just keep in mind you want to make your reverse applique not interfere with any of your side seams or the lower edge seam of your bag. So if your tote pattern has boxed corners, things like that, you'll need to take that into account when you position your heart onto your exterior fabric. All right, but if you're doing this on a sweatshirt or a ready-made t-shirt or something like that, then you will already have your pre-made seams and things like that that you can just take into account. So I took my canvas fabric rectangle and placed my cute little patchwork heart wrong side up over the fabric. All right, once you have it where you want it, you want to pin it in place really well so that it doesn't shift. All right, now we're gonna take that 50 weight cotton thread and we're just gonna stitch the perimeter of the heart right to the fabric, okay? You can use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's probably going to look the best since we've used a 1/4 inch seam allowance for all of the patchwork piecing. So you'll sew the entire thing. We don't need an opening for turning or anything. Sew the entire heart. Now we're going to flip our fabric so that it's right side up and we can see the stitching of our heart. And we're going to very carefully lift that fabric up and cut a slit through it, being very careful to not harm our patchwork heart that is underneath. We're going to slice through that fabric and we're going to cut out the canvas heart about a 1/4 inch away from our stitching line. If you want, you can be a little bit more generous and go about a 1/2 inch away. But I say trust yourself. You can eyeball this and just glide your scissor blades right along that seam line so that you have a pretty narrow allowance from the stitching. We're going to add quilting and top stitching to this after the fact. All right. Yes, very carefully, someone's saying. So here I am just cutting away that outer fabric to reveal the patchwork underneath. And now we have our cute little reverse applique patchwork heart inset into a piece of canvas fabric. Someone is asking, what size did you cut your canvas? I cut it just to fat quarter size, just for the sake of making it easy. So it's 18 by 22 inches. And you can trim this up to whatever size you want your tote to be. All right. So after we have this, now we get to add some fun quilting to it. So I am, again, using that 30 weight cotton blendables thread. I went with sort of a yellowish, creamish, whitish variety, which only coordinated with one of the fabrics that was in my charm pack, my mini charm pack, I should say. But it also goes well with the canvas color that I was using, which is like a basic tan canvas. All right, so you can choose something that is completely different that goes with your fabrics. Maybe our strawberry daiquiri color. That would look really, really cute with a heart if you're working with pinks and reds and whites and that type of thing. So with this, of course, we need to size up to our 9014 needle so that our needle eye is large enough for that fabric. And we're going to create a little bit of a quilt sandwich with our canvas fabric. So I take a piece of really low loft cotton batting and used my KK2000 to adhere my reverse applique exterior rectangle to that batting rectangle. And I just cut them exactly the same size. Your batting can be cut a little bit larger and you can trim it down after if that makes you a little bit more comfortable. All right, so we're going to sandwich those together. This is going to give our tote or our finished project, whatever it is, a little bit more body as well. I like to line my totes also. It makes them, easier to wash, easier to use. And I like the additional weight of like a thin batting or even a fusible fleece in a tote as well. All right, so if you would like, you can also add like a piece of muslin behind the batting if you're concerned that it's going to catch on your presser foot while you're doing the quilting. This isn't a concern for me just because of the type of batting that I was using. It's very low loft compressed batting. So I don't have, a lot of fibers that are kind of coming off of the batting, if you know what I mean. For the quilting, I like to go up to a 3.5 millimeter stitch length, especially when I'm working with that heavier weight thread. Just a little bit longer stitch gives you a little bit more of a quilty vibe and a little bit more room for that thicker thread to create that stitch as well. So you'll have sort of a more balanced stitch as well. And, you know, less chance that your needle might skip a stitch, something like this. I use the same 50 weight cotton thread in the bobbin as well when I'm working with that 30 weight on top. So now you can really quilt your heart however you like. I quilted it really simply, just 1/8 of an inch away from each seam on either side. So along all the columns and all of the rows. And then what I did was I went inside of the heart a couple of times and outside of the heart a couple of times. So additional stitching along my canvas as well as along the heart. So it kind of gave it this like sketchy appearance around the heart. I think I went around the heart 3 times along the canvas and 3 times inside of the patchwork to really just kind of give it that sketchy look. And when you're working with that blendables thread, it really gives a nice sort of watercolor effect along the outside of your patchwork. You could do satin stitching. You could pick a decorative stitch and go along the outside of your heart. Completely up to you for that. Then we have our finished quilted heart that is inset inside of that canvas rectangle. And now it is ready to use for a variety of things. I'm not going to give you the instructions for a tote bag today, but again, you could look up tote at blog.sulky.com and find numerous tote bag patterns, or use your favorite method for creating a tote bag if that's what you want to do with your patchwork heart. You could inset this into a denim jacket and it would be adorable. I love the heart on its side, but of course you could center your heart as well. So many different ways of interpreting this project. Here's just a little bit closer look at all of the quilting lines that I did on my particular heart. Yours may look completely different depending on what you want to do. So here is just a finished tote bag you could create. This also looks really great on a sweatshirt. I love that look. But again, denim shirt, denim jacket. I love patchwork with denim. I don't know what it is, but I mentioned that we first sort of did this technique with the Soft and Sheer Extra and creating your own stabilizer grid during our patriotic patchwork webcast that we did with American Sewing Guild last year. You can still register for that free webcast and get more tips and tricks and ideas for how to place your squares to create different looks. So if you want to instead create an entire fabric panel for the exterior of a tote bag, you would of course adjust your stabilizer size and your grid. So this is what it looks like, or what it can look like when you're working with tiny 1-inch fabric squares. It ends up being really, really stunning. And when you're working with 1-inch fabric squares, and then you add in your 1/2 inch or your 1/4 inch seam allowances on either side, you're going to end up with these tiny little 1/2 inch square patchwork pieces that are all perfectly straight with perfect corners every single time because of this method. So what I did here for our patriotic patchwork webcast was I created this exterior panel, and then I turned it into this tote bag that actually features an old pair of jeans. That's what I used for the side panels, the base of the tote, and the handles. So this is all sort of repurposed from an older pair of jeans and then leftover fabric squares that I had from a charm pack. So you can see you can create something really stunning, and it looks like you just spent, you know, months making this patchwork panel, and all you did was kind of play around with your fabric placement, and you got a lot more use out of some found objects, right? Or some scraps. So yes, patchwork and denim, it's very Americana, right? Love it. Also, during that patchwork webcast, I created this heart out of my fabric squares. So these are all white fabric squares and then the red ones inside using a beautiful batik collection. So you can play around with the placement on your grid and create lots of different looks. Now, this is of course creating a whole panel versus creating something smaller that you do that reverse applique with to create lots of different things. So many different ways you can kind of interpret or translate this technique for. And then here is a pillow that I ended up creating out of that heart. So a couple of different ways to do a heart, a couple of different ways to do this gridded stabilizer technique to create lots of different things. All right. Love all the new ideas. Thank you so much. Did I put lining in the tote? Yes, I always like to line a tote. I also think it's a really great way to hide the ends of your straps as well and make them sit inside of your exterior and lining tote. And then you could just do a little bit of top stitching along the handles where you add them to, you know, sort of reinforce them and make sure they're nice and strong. All right, so one more thing I want to discuss as I leave you today, because we are here in the new year. It's our first episode of 2026. I definitely want you to be thinking about our Greece trip. We are going on this Greece trip in the end of May, early June. Great, beautiful time to go to Greece. And this tour is going to close for registrations at the end of this month. So it's definitely time to pull the trigger and come with us to Greece. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic tour through Athens and Mykonos and Santorini. And I don't know, I will try not to sing the whole soundtrack to Mamma Mia because I know that will be so annoying, but I just cannot wait. And I hope that you will join us in Greece with craft tours. I link directly to all of our upcoming tours in the description of today's post, so you can choose from Greece. We are also headed back to Germany in the end of 2026 for another Christmas market tour. And this time we are adding on France and Switzerland. So this is going to be really, really exciting Christmas market tour. And yes, we will be going back to the Sulky headquarters there in Stockstadt, Germany. So you can see how Sulky thread is made and packaged and wound and, you know, prepared for shipment. It's a really, really fun, exciting afternoon. Also, we will be headed to Bali in 2027. This will be in the beginning of summer 2027, so you have lots of time to prepare for this trip. We will be learning all about batiks, how batiks are made. We're going to make our own batiks, and this is just another absolutely fantastic bucket list location. If you've ever seen Eat, Pray, Love, we will be going to some of those locations where Julia Roberts is in the rice fields and she's on the swings, I think with Javier Bardem. I'm not sure, but anyways, it's absolutely breathtaking. And then also in 2027, we will be going to Tuscany. That's right, we will be going to Florence, and we will be going all through Tuscany to a number of different absolutely gorgeous places. And this is all going to be really centered around your love of sewing and crafting. So these are phenomenal opportunities to travel this year and next year as well. So get those on your list and check them out. You can get on payment plans with craft tours so that you can easily manage payments up until the day that we depart. I would love to have you come along. All right. Thanks everybody for joining me on our first So What of 2026. I hope that I've inspired you to get to your sewing machines and make something and learn something new. And again, make sure you are signed up for our free webcast happening next Tuesday, January 13th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So it's going to be after our So What episode. We will head on over to sewingonline.sulky.com for Luxe Loungewear with embroiderydesigns.com and Amanda's Bundles. So I will see you there, and I'll see you here next